As long as we're drinking it.
Yeah, this is the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
That's very fancy. La-dee-da.
It's the Honest Drink Whiskey Society.
Anyway.
I mean, you guys could do one of those.
Maria, welcome back.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you for having me again.
So nice to see you again.
I'm excited.
So how you been?
I've been really good, right? How long has it been since I've been here? What, it was like October-ish, September-ish?
Really? I thought it was longer than that.
I remember that it was like definitely was warm, and I had been back to China for just
Like a month or something like that.
Yeah,
or
like a few weeks. Yeah. So maybe it was like September, because I came back the middle of August.
Wait, of 2019, right?
No, it was 2020.
2020?
Yep.
You were here in 20... Oh my God, my memory is
Because
so
I
fucking
spent
bad.
7 months of 2020 locked out of China. So I'm extremely happy to be back in China and back here.
Great.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. And I get to
Cheers.
meet more people today.
Yes. Full team today.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like... I don't know, I don't know if it's just my own memory that's been like really bad, or it's just that maybe everyone's going through this, because the last year has been like a vortex of like pseudo reality almost, right? And it messes with you. And I think it speaks to like our relationship with time. And it's such a subjective thing, I feel. But for you as a coach, like how, I guess, if we're just gonna dive right into it, like
Please.
to the big question is like, how do you view like our personal relationships with time?
It's a very difficult question to answer, like just with a sentence.
Yeah.
Like time is the only thing that we physically can't make more of. Doesn't matter how much money we have. Like time is the same for everybody, right? It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter where you grew up. Like you can't create physically more time.
It's the great equalizer.
It
as they
is.
say.
It is like so time and death, I guess. And everyone, I don't know, in the last few months, really, I keep hearing everybody saying like, "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy," and I'm like, "Are you? Are you really? Are you busy doing what exactly?" Like we have this concept that like, "Oh, we never have enough time because we're always busy doing something." I honestly don't think that's true.
You want to challenge that belief,
I
right?
absolutely. I'm like one of my missions is just try to stop people from saying I'm busy. I've honestly been trying to do that. I might slip up sometimes, but in a few, like since last year, I think I've been trying very, very hard never to say I'm busy. Now, trying to come up with alternative sentences is hard, but I'm trying my best.
But do you think so? Actually, what you just said hits home to me because I mean, you guys call me out all the time because I'm always walking in, whether I'm hungover or I've been missing in action because I haven't been able to be on the podcast is because I'm too busy.
Right.
And if I really think about it, actually, there's two things that pop in my mind of why do I say I'm too busy, right? One is probably because knowing myself, I am busy to a certain extent because I have prioritized certain focuses in my life. And for me to add in another focus or throw in another focus within that, it perturbs me. It's like, oh, I can't throw that extra thought in my mind. Even though technically if I did allocate a little time to think about it, I would be able to allocate time to do something or finish something or whatever, right? Because let's say I'm on a project, let's say I have to write a script, right? And if that's my priority right now, maybe the script, if I just sat down and did it like really hardcore without any disturbances, I can get it done in 2 hours, let's say. But then it becomes a 2-day thing, because I'm, taking a walk here and I'm not feeling inspired or I'm, doing something else. My mind kind of wanders, a text comes in, but it's just the focus. It's like the idea of another focus coming in or
you get distracted or you procrastinate.
Yeah. It's just I would feel guilty. I'm like, I cannot, split my time to do something else because of priority or because of, yeah.
Maria, why does that notion of people saying I'm too busy bother you?
Because most of the time is used as an excuse for not doing stuff. Like, for example, how many times have you heard people say, "Oh, I can't, eat right, or I can't exercise, or I can't do whatever I say it's my priority because I'm too busy." And I'm like, it's not true. Like, you're not busy. You don't have the right priority at the moment, or you're not making time to prioritize whatever it's important. Going back to your example, like I 100% understand the feeling of, I know I have something to do, it's in my head, and I feel that everything else that comes in is just distracting me, right? Because our brain is made to process things, it's not made to remember. So, well, it's made to remember up to a certain extent. But by the time that everything comes in, your mind feels like it's too cluttered to process. But at the same time, things take the amount of time you give them to. Like if you give yourself 2 hours, you will do the script in 2 hours. Yeah. If you give yourself a month, it will take a month.
So it fills up.
It does, because like it is, I mean, time, the weird thing about time is that it is set, right? We can create more. But going back to what Justin was saying is that the perception is so personal, right? You heard everybody say, oh, this 5 minutes felt like 3 hours, or time flies. Yeah. It's all about how you feel about whatever you're doing.
I heard something similar when I was starting to pick up the habit of running a few years ago. And what helped me was using the Nike Plus running app with the Headspace coaching combination. So Nike and Headspace, Andy Puttycombe got together and they would do these 30-minute run sessions, and Andy Puttycombe and the Nike coach would coach you through it. And there was a pet peeve of the coach, and it reminds me of what you're saying. He said that, I don't believe in the phrase people saying, oh, I can save time. He was very much against that, kind of like what you were saying with, like, I'm too busy. He's like, you can only use the time, but you can't like save time. And it reminds me of that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Like saving time usually means that you're trying to do 2 things at the same time. And that's usually a terrible idea. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but one of my huge pet peeves is multitasking.
Oh, no, we didn't get into that this time. Yeah.
Well, I really don't like multitasking. Well, how much time do you have?
We have plenty of time.
There you go. So it really depends how you define multitasking, because of course we can do 2 things at the same time, right? You can run and listen to Headspace. But that is not the same thing as watching a movie and texting, or writing an email and, I don't know, listening to a podcast or talking to someone. Like, for me, multitasking is when you're trying to get the same parts of your brain to do 2 different things. Like if you're walking and listening to a podcast, you don't need your ears to walk, you don't need your feet to listen. So you're basically, a friend of mine calls it time multipliers. So that you're doing more with your time because you're using 2 different abilities that don't compete with each other. Same thing, you're washing the dishes and listening to music. You're, I know, walking the dog and taking a phone call. Like those things can be together because they're not competing. For me, the multitasking that I really don't like is using your brain to do like the same parts of your brain to do 2 things, and you're not doing either of them properly because you're half watching the movie, you're half present in the conversation.
You just don't have the bandwidth. Right?
You just don't. And people, like especially in the corporate world, like in job descriptions, oh, we want someone who's good at multitasking. No, you don't. That's a terrible thing to say. You don't want someone who's really good at doing 3 things badly, because then you just have poor results. But
why are you assuming those 3 things are going to get done badly? Is that just from your own experience? You've seen it over and over?
I think that if you're telling people to do multiple things at the same time, it's not possible to do them 100%. Now, I understand that what I'm saying, that I might be generalizing. Definitely in my experience, I know that I work much more effectively if I focus on something 100%. Like if I'm writing a script, if I'm writing an email, if I'm writing a book, for example. I know that I just need to dedicate 2 hours to do that. And I physically switch my phone off. Like I try to take all the distractions away, because I know that if I'm distracted, I will just not be doing as a good job. Now, is everybody exactly like me? Of course not. But I genuinely think that writing an email while chatting on WeChat, it just takes twice the time. So you might be getting at the same results, but then you're not even saving time. You're just wasting it.
There's lots of modes at work that inherently compete. And one of the things that's starting to happen is that corporations are expecting your attention all the time, either explicitly or implicitly,
Right.
because of the tools. And email was somewhat sort of like not demanding your attention all the time, even though it was like starting with BlackBerry. But now you have all kinds of other tools that are real time, and they're built on the premise of being able to stay connected every moment, like a Facebook. But they're building corporate tools like that, and there are multiple tools, and they're all for different reasons. And so every corporation has these things. You have your intranet, you have your web-based portal, you have a chat tool, you have some knowledge repository, you have email, you have meetings. And the way everything is being structured is precisely what you're saying, is everything is competing with one another, and you really can't perform, because we all know, like, whether it's in art or music or whatever, people who perform at a very high level are the ones that are best at focusing. And so these tools are taking you away from being able to focus and then concentrate your mind to get into a flow.
Exactly. Michael Csikszentmihalyi, is that how you pronounce that name? You read Flow, the book?
Oh,
It's really good. But that's exactly what you're saying. And I don't remember the exact statistic, and I probably should just memorize that, because there was a study from MIT, I think. I might be wrong. But it was a study that tracked the switching cost of task. It takes like 25% more every time that you switch back to the task to get back into whatever you were doing. So like if an email or a script or whatever takes you 20 minutes, if you get interrupted by minute 5, then it would take you a few minutes to get back into it. So instead of 20 minutes, it takes you an hour, because every time you get a phone call, you of course switch attention to the phone call. And then to get back into whatever you were doing, it takes you, we're not robots. It takes us, maybe there's emotions involved. Maybe there's something you have to do. We cannot just switch in 1
it's
second.
not instantaneous.
Right.
It's like paddling a boat. If you stop paddling, you lose all that momentum, and then you have to start paddling from still water. It takes up so much more energy to get back to that same momentum you were currently at.
Exactly. And how much harder it is to paddle a boat from standing still compared to the boat already going.
100%.
You bring up kind of focusing on like one task at a time and kind of dedicating your total bandwidth to each task. I mean, that inherently is tied to priorities, right?
Yes.
Because if you're not going to multitask and you're going to work on each thing individually, then you're going to have to put some sort of hierarchy to what you're going to handle first.
Absolutely.
So it goes back to kind of the whole time management issue we're talking about, and saying I'm too busy. And my thought has always been this, like when someone says I'm too busy, and I'm glad Eric and Howie are here today, because I'm going to call them out. They are two people that frequently say that, and they are extremely busy people. But I feel like it's not, for the average person, saying I'm too busy is not being completely honest. Right? We're talking semantics, because I feel like I'm too busy is more of a narrative you're telling yourself rather than a statement you're actually making.
Yes.
So when you kind of constantly feed yourself this narrative, like, oh, I'm too busy, well, then you're going to be too busy. But if you can kind of try to do away with that narrative and switch the perspective of, it's not that you're too busy, I'm just not going to prioritize this thing right now, so I'm not going to do it.
There you go.
It's not I'm busy, but it's not a priority for me. Because if it was a priority for you, you would find a way, somehow to squeeze it in, no matter how busy you are, right? Like we said on the last part, like if your house is on fire, you could be too busy, but you're not going to be too busy to go to your house and put that fire out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sad that I don't have my laptop with me, because I just recently I changed the desktop background to a quote that says, "Actions define priorities."
Yeah.
Which is, if you're going to do something, it's because it's either urgent or important, but it's something that you want to do because there's a reason. And if you keep procrastinating something else, it's because at the moment it's not a priority for you. Now, whether that's a good or bad decision for the result, time will tell, or, depending how involved you are in that decision. But ultimately, I'm going to keep going back to, our brain is wired to like pleasure and dislike pain. If something it feels like pain because you don't want to do it for a variety of reasons, you're going to procrastinate it. That's why, getting up in the morning, it's painful. If you have to go to work and you don't want to, like it's a narrative that we're telling ourselves. And usually if you try and hear when people say I'm busy, is either in asking, oh, how have you been lately? I haven't seen you in a while. Oh, I'm so busy. Or you're telling yourself that you can't do something because you're busy. So it's not that you just wake up in the morning and say, oh, today I'm too busy. Like, no, you're always like referring to something else, either to justify it or to, I guess, rationalize things.
It's a very important point. And the narratives that you tell yourself then ultimately determine what you end up doing and how successful you are. And I'm just thinking anecdotally, people that I admire and that are successful, I don't feel like they use that narrative as much as people that are less successful. When I think about people that are really successful, people that by all accounts should be more busy than everyone, when you ask them that question, trying to be sort of, overly respectful to them, it's like, oh, you're really busy lately. And sometimes they come back and say, oh, not really. Or like, no, I can handle it. And it's those that probably have a less control of their lives. And so that phrase is more also an indicator, a rough indicator of how assertive you are over your own life. And the danger, I think, with using this phrase is that you're not taking ownership of things and you're not looking at the root cause. Because the root cause itself isn't the time element. The root cause is what you're saying is that I don't want to do it, even though I know it's good for me. And that's always been a human struggle, is prioritizing your long-term success over that short-term feel good. And that takes a lot of training. And that's also something I'd love to maybe get your perspective on, is that how do we train ourselves to be able to tolerate that short-term pain and reframe it into a way where we can take on more pain so that we can do more of what we want?
In the past, so since we last spoke, I am now a person who wakes up before 6 most days of the week. This was not a thing I thought I could do.
Even last time we spoke, you weren't doing that?
Not as consistently, no. Because in October, I started going to FitFam, which means that I exercise outside at 6 a.m. at Flushing Park a couple of times a week. And then I do Monday morning motivation, which means that on Mondays we're online at 7 a.m., which means that I have to get up at 6 something, at least on Mondays. And now, because now it's June and July and summer, it's fantastic because, it's easier to get out of bed. But getting out of bed and being outside in -2 degrees in the rain in January, it's not fun. It's really not. And it takes a lot of, and I didn't realize I had that determination in me to be able to do that, because when I say it, it sounds like I'm a crazy person. I'm like, yeah, I do that. And I actually enjoy it. Why? Well, because I realized that for me, exercising is an extremely important part of feeling at ease with myself. It's challenging myself because I'm not an extremely fit person, but I do okay. But I got there because I was challenging myself to be able to say, okay, can I do this? Well, I guess I can. So I'll keep pushing myself. Also, for me, the community aspect is really, really important. I wouldn't do that to go running alone, because I don't like running, and also because alone is boring. But exercising with other people, I get to make connections. And that is also important for me as a human being and having a social life, but, also to just do something with other people and, share the pain and share the challenges, because that creates bonds. You can, read all the books and do all the steps, but if it's not important for you, if you're not intrinsically motivated to do it, it's just going to fade away after a while.
I mean, the very definition of priority means not everything can be a priority.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to get a lot of things done, how do you stack them in a way where, because often in times, we like to talk, to simplify the discussion, we like to talk about black and whites, right? There's a priority and then there isn't priority. There's one priority and everything else is below that. But often in life, we're faced with situations where there's many things that have to be prioritized all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they all have to get done just as critically and just as urgently. And we don't have the luxury of being, I'll do this one first and then get to that, right? That's not real life.
Right.
You know, so there's an inherent paradox there in terms of how do you prioritize these things when everything needs to get done.
Have we talked about the focusing question last time?
No, what is that?
So in the book, The One Thing, which by Gary Keller, I think, it's a very good book, but it's all about this question, which is called the focusing question, which is a very simple question, but it's one of the most powerful that I've ever come across, which is, what can you do so that by doing that, everything else is easier or unnecessary?
What can you do
that makes everything else
easier or
unnecessary? Because I hear what you're saying. Of course, in daily life, we have like 1,000 things to do and we might have competing priorities. But if we stop for a second and think about a few of those things might be interconnected, right? It's very unlikely that we have like 1,000 things that are all one standalone things that have nothing to do with each other. So one way to look at it is, okay, I have all these things. While most of them are competing for my attention, what is one thing that I can start with so that if I do that, maybe I don't need to do all the thousands?
Like a common denominator?
Maybe, for example, I don't know, if you are looking at, I'm blanking out. Examples, please.
First of all, I would highly recommend, and in fact, I would almost just like compel you guys to read The One Thing, because neither of us will be able to articulate the contents better than you reading it. But suffice it to say that it is a truly profound piece of work, and obviously it's written by someone that's extremely successful. If we were that successful, we'd.
So who is it written
Gary
by?
Keller. Gary Keller.
It's called The One Thing.
The One Thing. Gary
yeah.
Keller and Jay Papasan. But Gary Keller is the key guy, and he started his own real estate company in the U.S. and they ended up building it up to be like one of the largest real estate companies in the world. And he's probably in his 60s or something like that right now. And he's diversified his business. He actually has sort of a university arm of his business. He has like a whole group of people that then create seminars and do leadership coaching and stuff like that based on just all of his learnings.
Yeah.
And The One Thing is all about focus and multitasking being like, so there, it starts the book off with like the 6 lies or something like that. And it's like multitasking is one of them. It doesn't work, right? All the scientific studies basically stay. First of all, your brain can only do one thing at a time anyways. And then the switching costs are so high that you're never going to be able to achieve any kind of efficiencies doing that, unless they're not competing, of course. But the one thing would be something like, let's say that, you are working on several priorities. Let's say they're all important to you, because I think that's another thing, right? I think if you're tackling too many priorities, then there's trade-offs to be made to begin with, but that's another topic. So let's say there's 5 different things you want to do and you don't have enough energy, time, whatever it is. For me, that one thing, and maybe for you, Maria, was exercise. And that's what Gary Keller talks about in almost every successful person. You ask Ray Dalio, you ask Gary Keller, Obama, whoever it is, right? I would say if you ask them, 99.9% of them would be like, what's the one thing you can do to make your life easier? What's the one thing you can do fundamentally and make that choice and prioritize that one thing over everything else and do it? And that's exercise. And for me, it was, you guys know it's a game changer. And then the rest of the day starts. And then you can start applying the question to different realms. So like, let's say you work for a corporation or a business or whatever it is, right? What's the one thing you can do? And, time after time, in small ways, I've applied it. And like, if you're a salesperson, what's the one thing you can do? And usually there's like one thing you can do, or there's one person you should be meeting, or one conversation you should be having. And the power of the question allows you to actually identify a specific tactic. If we look at your directing career, what was that one thing? And you can look back and say, 3 years ago, what one thing should you have done first so that everything else was easier? I bet you could have found that one thing. And so it then assumes that everything has a sequence and it's a series of dominoes. And each domino is capable of toppling over a slightly bigger domino. And it starts the book with this brilliant analogy where each domino, if it could topple over a domino that was 20% bigger, eventually with enough 10 dominoes, you could go to the moon. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's quite
So how do you identify that one thing? Because to me, it sounds like finding a needle in a haystack almost. Like what like does the book give any insight on how to identify
Let me
it?
ask you a question, Justin. So let's say this podcast, right? When we first started this podcast to get to this point, what was the one thing that we did in the very beginning that we then later found out was like that key that made everything else easier?
Drinking.
Drinking was one of them.
Always.
But maybe even before that, the one thing was just finding the right 3 people. And without finding the 3 people that could kind of click, we couldn't have had the podcast in the same way. And so that one thing was actually finding us. And no matter how much time you spent on other stuff, if you didn't find the 3 people, nothing would have gotten started. And then at some point you got the equipment. And then that was like a key one thing in that moment. Because you got the equipment, then we were all motivated to come, and there was a whole slew of benefits. And so what it means is that in any sequence of things where you want to get to an overall outcome that takes time, there's a lot of things that need to be done. But Maria, you captured it so well. They're not all independent things that are unrelated. There are certain things, once you do it, it makes everything else easier. And you read the first couple of chapters, and I think it gives you a bit of a better perspective on some of the tactical things that you can do.
Yeah.
But there's a process to really think through, and you have to sit down. And the one thing that Gary Keller says is that, okay, every morning for 2 hours, okay, he exercises, and then he blocks out 2 hours, and he doesn't let anything disturb him. And that's the one thing that makes everything else easier, is giving yourself that space of 2 hours to think about things.
Right. I was literally about to say, Justin, when was the last time that you sat down and maybe made a list of all the things you had to do?
I've never done that.
And
Yeah.
actually like ask yourself that question and see out of the list, which ones are connected and which thing might have to rise to the top. I honestly have started doing that lately, where I was talking to a few friends, and last year when I was in lockdown, I found that journaling in the morning really like saved my mental health. And lately I started 2 companies, by the way, since the last time we spoke.
Which 2? What 2 companies? Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Well, it's one in China and one in Europe, and doing my consulting and coaching and training. So it's all based on what I do. So it's about effectiveness, productivity, cross-cultural communication, leadership, soft skills. I just finalized all of that in like a brand instead of just being my name. And starting a company in China is challenging, turns out. Not as difficult as I thought it was going to be, but definitely has a few, paperwork and headaches that have to go through. So the last few months have been mentally a bit stressful and a bit of, a lot of things to go through. Nothing particularly earth-shattering, but, the constant thinking about step by step. And I realized that I wasn't journaling anymore, and that had really had an effect on me. And so the last month-ish, now I journal every day before 9:00 on a weekday, and then before lunch on a weekend. And I do exactly that. I turn my phone off. I put on some like binaural music or like some very like lo-fi or whatever it's called. And then I bought fancy new notebooks, so that motivates me to use fancy pens and fancy notebooks. And I just sit down at least for 15 minutes. If I write 3 sentences or 5 pages, it doesn't really matter. But I give myself that time to just like write down whatever I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about. Sometimes it looks like a to-do list for the day. Sometimes it looks like whatever I experienced the day before. Sometimes it looks like a conversation I had or a disagreement I had with someone. And it looks very different every day. But that gives me the time. And I created that time for myself in order to process a few things. And that for me is one of the things that I prioritized. Now, because I've been doing it for a little while now, it's a habit. And I think that the key of the one thing is that you have to ask yourself that question multiple times. It's not a one-off. Because what is important or what was important 3 months ago might have shifted. So why you may not ask, well, so there's some, I think in the book, I read it last year, so I don't remember all the details, but I do remember that there was an idea of like, you can ask that, every day. What is the one thing I have to do today that will make my day easier?
And you can use it in different sort of contexts like that. So let's say that you're just zooming in to like today, like a day. And I know that exercise just makes all the difference. Like it literally, like if I exercise in the morning, then anyone who meets me that day will be like, God, you haven't such incredible energy. I just don't know how much energy that you have. And if I don't exercise, I could be like, feel like the sleepiest person in the world the entire day. And while it's still painful to wake up really early, I don't do the 6 a.m. ones. That's just too early.
Come to the dark
I
side.
know, like 6 a.m. Like, I mean,
we don't have cookies.
yeah,
but
I've
we have
been
nice
through
people.
that process where I like working out at 7 a.m. is something that I think I built up a routine over the years. But just the fact that I could run at 6 or 7 a.m. was already a major accomplishment.
Absolutely.
But the one thing would be like running in the morning. And that was a breakthrough. That was an absolute breakthrough for me. I don't think I could have made it through the responsibilities that I had with my work the last few years without doing that. So that was key. But they also give you techniques at a bigger level. And they say, okay, well, choose something that's a year out or 3 years out. And we've done this exercise a little bit before and say, in a year, I want the podcast to be like this. Okay, well, let's then go backwards. Like if I want the podcast to be like this in 1 year, then 6 months before that, where do we have to be? And what would be the one thing to get you to the next step? And then you keep working backwards and you're breaking it down, and you can go all the way to today.
Like reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering it. And he gives examples, so it's not just conceptual, like you can really break things down. And we kind of broke it down, right? We said we need to get great guests and content on the show. And that was the one thing. You could do everything else and it might not make a difference. But if you did that, that would truly make a difference, and then everything becomes easier after that.
Yeah, I mean, many people have told me the benefits of journaling, right? And so what I'm hearing from you, Maria, is like I feel I would have to assume, because I haven't started journaling yet, but I would have to assume by doing so, it really helps you find that one thing, in the sense that you can start noticing constants throughout your entire journey. And I think that's kind of a lot of what Eric was saying too, is like kind of finding that like common denominator, like what is that constant thing that's always been there for you, that's always been there helping you. And sometimes as we live life and we go through the busyness of our life, we don't really notice a lot of things we're doing. We take a lot of things for granted. But when you're actually having to put pencil to paper and write it down every day, you can start mapping out and noticing a lot of constants that you might not have noticed were there before. And then all of a sudden they jump out on the page and you're like, oh, wow, I've been doing that for all this time and that's always been there. Maybe that is a common denominator that's been a one thing that I really need to keep doing.
Absolutely. Like there's a lot of people, I think the other thing that jumps out a lot is when you ask successful people what they do in order to preserve their mental energy is meditation, right? You literally go anywhere online, and every person who has any degree of success will tell you meditation. I tried it. I don't know if that's for me. My meditation is journaling. I'm a writer. I like to write. I like to make sentences. I like words. For me, the sitting in silence, it's a little bit more challenging. I'm sure that with practice, and if that was a priority for me, I would definitely make time for it. But at the moment, the journaling part is what helps me. And there's a few things. Well, first, as you said, you put pen to paper. So instead of random thoughts in your head, you're forced to make sentences. And that is already a filter. And your brain is like kind of processing. Like, oh, how are you feeling? You cannot say, blah. You have to like find a word.
Yeah.
Is it sad? Is it frustrated? Is it happy? Like even just having a ballpark description helps you categorize what you're feeling.
And it's a sense of accountability too, right? Because when you actually have to articulate it and record it down, you feel accountable for what you're putting down on that piece of paper. So you really put some genuine thought into it. And also, like we were talking about this before, Howie and I, a while ago, we were talking about, it's like the same concept of, you know, when you think, like sometimes you have an idea in your head, and to you, while it's in your head, you think it's like the most brilliant idea in the world, right? And then you're excited to tell somebody. But as you're saying it out loud to somebody, you have to actually articulate it, you realize it was like such a stupid idea. But it's the same process when you have to write things down.
Do you revisit and read?
That's a great question. So I do try every 3 months to 4 months, depending on, to go back and just take a look at what topics at least I mentioned. Because if there's something that keeps coming up, then there might be something interesting in that. You know, maybe a relationship with some friends, or maybe something, maybe an idea that keeps getting stuck in your head, maybe something you keep mentioning. Or if you keep saying, I don't know, I really had trouble sleeping last night, you know, then we forget. But then if you keep reading that for a week, you always said I didn't sleep well. Well, okay, maybe that's the indicator that something was up, and you can always, you know, go back. And then you can do anything you want with that information. You can, you know.
Well, it's almost like a detective going back through like crime scene photos, you know?
Right.
Like going back through, like, what did I miss there? Like, you know, and sometimes things click or jump out at you that didn't initially do.
Right. And it is like a self-awareness work. Like it is kind of going back, and sometimes it feels like a completely different person.
There are probably so many different really powerful benefits for journaling, and one of them is it's just like the mind is such a powerful, you know, it's such a powerful part of us that we don't fully tap into, and so journaling allows you to take some of your everyone probably has some genius in them, and then it's not always just like bursting out, because you have to be inspired, you have to be in a good mood, you have to be in the right physical and mental state. And it's those brilliant moments that everyone has where something kind of comes out, and then you want to kind of like capture that in a bottle somehow. And, you know, that's definitely, I think, one benefit. I think how you mentioned like articulating your thoughts, that's definitely another one, because the brain's a very messy place. There's like gold and diamond and all this stuff in there, but there's an awful lot of other stuff in there as well, and it helps you sort of sort things out. And I think finally, you mentioned, and there's probably science behind this, I'm sure. I'd like to learn more about this, is that you mentioned the brain is better at processing than remembering. And so I think we're living moment to moment, and we're really not building on top of things if we're just living in the moment all the time. And you need to go back and actually capture certain things. If you think about building a building and creating the blueprint and designing it and building it, no one can do that in their head. You have to create the blueprint and go through this very, very methodical process, and you can't actually keep all that information in your brain. So again, it's your brain processing, and then you have to offload everything onto paper. So whether you look at like Supreme Court cases, scripts, there are very few people have the type of brain that has the actual database in there where they can process and remember simultaneously. And while we can do all the processing, we actually need something to capture the information. So before people could write, there was no progress in the world because we couldn't remember anything.
Right.
And so if you look at mathematical formulas, science, everything, it requires us to outsource the remembrance piece onto some other physical medium and then process that information over time. And even a writer, it's most writers have to actually painstakingly work through sentence after sentence after sentence on paper.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that like journaling is definitely like the more narrative version of another tool that is called like a brain drain or a brain dump. Yeah. My friend John, who's also a coach, like I went through one of his courses, and like a brain drain was the first thing he had us to do in the morning. And another friend of mine, she also recommended, just like going through like in the morning, just take a piece of paper, just write whatever's in your mind. It could be about like, I really want chocolate, or like I want breakfast, or there's a mosquito in my room. Like it doesn't really matter. But the fact that you are downloading basically your brain, it gives your brain much more space. Literally, like, we're very familiar with old technology, and you have to download stuff because your memory gets full. Like our brain is not that different. And if you keep all the stuff in your head, it's not going to be useful, because that memory, that remembering, like why do we have to-do lists? Why do we have alarms on our phones? Why do we have things that remind us to do stuff? Is because we can trust our brain up to a point, but at some point something else will come in that is competing for that attention. So that information will drop. And so that's why we have, pebbles, we have stone tablets, we have everything, just because like we can't really remember everything.
Yeah, that's such a great point you said. And connecting just a couple of dots, Justin, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about like an inner voice and how convoluted that is. And then you were saying it's kind of like defragging, defragging the brain. And this is basically that memory dump is like defragging. And then I think that another analogy is like, imagine like you're traveling, you're trying to go somewhere, and you had to carry everything on your back, it would be like heavy. You wouldn't be able to go anywhere. And so being able to write things down in journal is sort of like having someone that can carry all your bags
Like a
for you.
Sherpa.
Like a Sherpa. There you go.
Like a Sherpa,
There
exactly.
you go. Right?
Yeah.
Like a support car or going to run up on a bike race. Like,
Yeah, like
Well, it goes back to your example, Eric, of using like the court system, right? Or you said the Supreme Court
yeah.
in trials. Well, it's just like the same thing. Like you can like what you said, Maria. You can only rely on your brain up to a certain point, but after a certain point, it's very inconsistent and actually very unreliable. That's why in trials, eyewitness testimony is one of the
Exactly.
most unreliable forms of evidence,
absolutely.
because eyewitness testimony is just is completely reliant on your memory of that time. But often our memories, when it comes to details, is majorly flawed.
We can talk about like how really do we believe that we can interpret reality? Because like the facts are the facts, sure, but everyone sees reality in a different way. So like eyewitness on that side, just that you should just not look at them, like just don't even trust them. Not because they're lying, because they're human beings, and human beings by default they interpret whatever they see with their own lens, with their own filters, which is just a natural human being process.
The corruption happens at multiple levels. So imagine you're relying on facts to be able to make decisions and determine things. Facts is like the basis. So the input of facts is already corrupted because it's like the data is already corrupted to begin with because of human bias. And then over time, the memory, to your point, is fallible. And then the data, the file gets corrupted again. So then how can you rely on it? The data, the file itself is corrupted in the sense of digital corruption.
Yeah.
It is,
So what does that mean reality is? That's mind F.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like trying to get the information of like a floppy disk onto an iPhone, and you're like, that's just not going to work, really.
Yeah, how many times have we, spoken to each other about, do you remember when we did this? Well, and then you're like, wait, that's not how it went.
It was not me.
Right?
That's not how it went down.
Right? Yeah.
Right, but everyone has their own version. Like, of course, you experience things, and of course, our memory is fallible. So you might remember that it was someone, that it was someone else. Like, that's like the basics. But then you make a gesture, and I interpret it in a complete different way compared to, communication.
Yeah.
Like, we could be here all day talking about, a smile. What does that smile mean? Oh, I thought, she was being nice to me. Oh, I thought she hated me because she smiled at me. Same gesture, 1,000 different interpretation depending on, how you feel about the person, what the situation. If you're grumpy, if you're hangover, if you're tired, if you're happy, if you just, whatever. Like, it's so many filters that, I mean, should we just question the nature of reality, really?
Well, it's just unclear. And like you feel like in life,
Simulation theory.
I mean,
you feel like in life you want to be able to understand like truth. You want to be able to understand like what's going on consistently.
right.
And it's all very messy and very blurry, and like our memories are super duper fallible. So how do you gain that clarity over things?
Well, there's a theory that says that there is no such thing as universal constants when you're dealing with emotional beings, right? I mean, we're all emotional beings. We're all going to perceive things in different ways,
Right.
different shades. So how can there literally be any universal constants in that kind of world or in that kind of society?
I think that math is probably like the easiest way to like see like the only constant in the universe, because it's
mathematics.
like, like detached from context, from emotions.
Or bias
Or
or
anything,
opinion.
right?
Yeah.
It's just like that. Now, that doesn't make math very exciting, but also it makes it the only thing that it's kind of, like, if you want to say, quote unquote, true in any situation.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, like, humans are not mathematical equations. We're much messier than that.
Going into a whole different tangent here.
Yay, tangents. Tangents are math.
I know,
It
we
counts.
love tangents.
Not too busy for tangents.
But
I like tangents.
do you believe that time is a linear thing?
That's a great question. I wish that time was like the arrival time, like that. That would be really, really cool. Speaking from my personal experience, time is linear, because like I experience time as one day after the other. But it's also much more complicated than that. As we said at the beginning, like time expands and contracts according to our perception.
Well, Maria, I definitely want to save some time to get into your book.
Okay.
And let me just read off the
Speaking
title.
of egos.
Simple time management tools for clarity, right? The book is called Clarity, easy guidelines to help you feel less overwhelmed and achieve more. Without, I guess, giving too much away, but like, what would be like the main kind of lesson or takeaway you wanted to get across in this book?
Well, is that planning and like, I know that mindfulness has been thrown out a lot as a word, and I'm not a big fan of it because a lot of people attach a lot of meanings to mindfulness.
And it's cliche at this point. Too,
right, I guess. The idea is just like doing things just for the sake of it, or doing things just because you've been doing them for a long time doesn't serve you. Doing things because you decide to do it, whatever the motivation might be, it's definitely a much better way to go at it. And to decide what to do and how to do it, you do have to make the time to stop. Take that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 2 days, it doesn't really matter. But like I guess intentionality, it's a better word for it. As in like, instead of just, following the flow and doing what everybody else is doing or doing whatever you've been doing for the last 20 years, just intentionally decide what you want to focus on, what you want to prioritize, what you want to make time for. If the answer is whatever I've been doing before, great. Like, you don't have to change if you don't need to. But I think that a lot of people don't like realize that there's a different way to do things.
Well, it's like also reevaluating your habits, right?
Absolutely.
Like looking at your habits and like reevaluating, like, oh, are these habits actually serving me anymore?
And honestly, like, sorry, Eric, like the other thing is that I have a really hate and love relationship with my phone and with technology in general, because of course we are so connected to everything. And of course to work, like I work online as well with my clients, in person and online. And of course, like technology is so important, but we've been doing a lot of things just because we had access to technology. Like a lot of people wake up and just look at their phone right away. Sometimes you do need to do that. For example, at 5:20, when you have to know if your FitFam workout is on or not because outside is raining, and
AQI.
you don't want, and if the AQI is too bad, that you just could turn your phone off and go back to sleep because you can, and you're very happy about it. But other than that, like, we wake up and we look at our phone because that's what we can do. Like, not a lot of people stop and say, is that the best thing I can do to start my day? If the answer is yes, please. If that helps you, if getting your phone and looking at whatever you have to do or catching up with news is what makes your day better, please go ahead and do it. I'm quite sure there's a lot of people whose answer would be, no, my phone gives me anxiety. I want to stay away from my phone for the first half an hour of my day so that I can do something that makes me feel better. And that goes to the intentionality of it. Just because you can do it doesn't mean it's what you should do, I guess.
Yeah.
So your habits, our habits, determine our future. And I think we're always lamenting the present or the past and worrying about the future. And that's just our
Especially Howie.
Yeah, our inclination. And habits themselves are complex because on one hand, the notion of a habit determining your future is that you can continue to exercise the same behaviors to create momentum and progress to get somewhere better and have a better future. They can also be entrenched where you're doing the same things over and over and they don't serve you. And my question for you is that how do we stop what we're doing, break the patterns, and intervene in our own lives? All this stuff feels so good when we talk about it today and like learning from you and every time we get on the show. But how do we get to the point where we can create interventions for our own lives internally every single day and break the patterns so that we can break out of these entrenched behaviors? I think to me, that's the biggest challenge is that I just keep doing the same things over and over and over. Occasionally, I am able to surface a little bit and see something else, but I can't really break those patterns.
Well, there's a couple of things to that. And the first thing is that trying to change too many things at the same time is just challenging. Like, New Year resolutions don't work for a reason. because everybody on January 1st decides that they want to be healthier, smarter, quit smoking, quit alcohol. And you're like, just no.
Be like a whole different person.
Like it's
than they
not
are. Yeah.
like it's not gonna happen. Like humans are creatures of habit. Like if you try to completely 360 change your life, it's not gonna happen. Unless you have a really, really, really strong intrinsic motivation. For example, if you go to the doctor and unfortunately your doctor tells you that if you don't like quit smoking and start exercising tomorrow, you might have an extremely, serious disease the next day. Of course, then fear kicks in and you go like, okay, well, I'll change everything. But luckily for most people, you don't have that serious trigger. And so you're like, oh, well, I want to change everything. And your brain goes like, no, why? I don't like it. I like to do things that I like. Like, why do you want me to change everything at the same time? And so then people get discouraged by, like January 2nd or January 5th. And they go like, well, it was not worth the try. And so I'm not going to do it. So small incremental changes are definitely the way to go compared to big changes. That's like right off the bat. And how to create those changes, I think there's a couple of steps. And first is awareness, right? If you yourself are not aware of the behavior, you can't change it. Like, we all have our own blind spots. If we don't realize, or if other people don't tell us, we don't know that is something that we might want to change, or that we even do. How many times people go like, you do that. You're like, no, I don't. Of course, because we're not aware. So that awareness is the first step. But then if you only have awareness, you're like, yeah, okay, now what? And I think it goes back to like, okay, now that I have this awareness, what do I want to get out of it? Like, now that I know that this behavior is something I do, again, is this serving me? Usually if it's something you want to change, it's probably not serving you in the best way. So how can I modify it? And my suggestion would be, what is the smallest modification I can do that can bring me the biggest outcome? Because again, if you try to change everything, everybody could start running 5K every day for 10 years. Everybody can technically do that. But if you want to start to get fit, maybe, walking to the subway instead of getting a DD to work. That is a small change that can have bigger benefits.
A behavior that connects with what your current lifestyle is now without being a major stretch and that you could easily sort of do, like walking.
So is this like goal setting? Is this similar territory?
I guess, but it's not just about goal setting, because I feel that goal setting, it's always like so much in the future that you go like, well, it's far away. So you give yourself a same team, like, how much does it take to write a script? Well, if you give yourself a month, it will take a month. If you give yourself 2 hours, it will take 2 hours.
Well, it's just habit creation. You put a little more in a more simpler way, right? Like how to bring that 门槛 lower,
门槛 like that. And to that point, when you set goals, generally speaking, you're thinking about something that's not tomorrow. You're thinking about something that's months or years from now. And it's like it's what you would ideally want to become. And going from not exercising to like running marathons, like that's probably a very conventional example.
Right.
But it's too far in the future for you to make that change, because it's like the bar is so high. It's like me going from shooting, videos on my phone to being like Howie or Dennis or Christopher Nolan, right? But going from like not exercising at all to walking for 30 minutes a day is actually realistic, because it doesn't require a profound change to my current habits. And so it almost seems like when you set up goals, they should be in the form of habits, but that habit should actually be reachable from your current habit. So whatever habits you have now, you're never going to get to the other habit unless these two habits actually can connect with one another.
Connect the dots.
Stacking.
We always talk about connecting the dots.
It's called stacking. Like you stack, like when you want to get a new habit, for example, you use a trigger. Like, what is something you already do that can remind you to do something else? For example, a lot of people do mindfulness, or like when you're brushing your teeth, like you all brush your teeth like every day, twice a day. It's something that you, unless you're, you don't skip. So if, for example, there's like, be mindful for 2 minutes a day. Well, why not do it while you brush your teeth? So every time you brush your teeth, you can do the exercise. Going to work, it's something that you do most days of the week, most weeks a year. So going to work, walking instead of taking a taxi. It's something that it's already connected to what you're doing. And so you don't have to go out of your way to create it, because
Bring
again,
a new element in, right?
Exactly, because like our mind doesn't like to put too much effort into things. Like same like the example that everybody gives. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay your clothes next to your bed the night before, because you know that if you have to get out of bed and go to the closet and look for the clothes and look for the shoes, you're just like, there's too many steps between you and achieving that small thing. Make your life easier. Just don't complicate your life.
Taking this back to the one thing, though, maybe the one thing that you can do is just put your gym clothes there. I actually did that. So there was a suggestion from some of these Nike guided runs. And what I noticed was that any small resistance at 6 a.m. will keep you in bed.
Absolutely. It
Any
amplifies.
small-
Absolutely.
Oh, like, what am I going to wear today? Oh, fuck, let's just switch off.
I know, right? Like it's a real example. Like when it's 5:20 and it's raining or it's rainy and it's January, you really do not want to be outside. Like, I'm going to be very honest, I've been able to do that throughout winter because I have a good friend of mine who lives like next door to me. So we would like, she would say, I'll meet you at 5:45 at the corner. And like knowing that she was waiting for me was definitely like a plus.
That was the one thing for you.
Exactly. Like, 'cause like for me, like putting the clothes out was like, it was okay. But for me, it was like, I know that Becky's waiting for me. Like, I don't want to let her down. Also, I get to talk to her and exercise together. So like the community aspect. And like, so for me, that made it easier.
And that, and for you, community is huge. And going back to purpose and motivation, then you have to find, like, if some things are going to be painful no matter what.
Yes.
There are runners that run ultra marathons, and they say that every time they go out, it's still very painful for them. That it's still very painful. And so if you find things that you enjoy and you kind of stack them, I guess, in some ways, then you can kind of get over that hump. For me, I went through this. I didn't have a Becky, unfortunately, next door. So for me, it was putting the clothes out. And I told myself, I said, just put your clothes on and go down to the bottom of the apartment complex. And if you're really that tired and you feel like a piece of shit, just go back home. Just get, the one thing was just
make it downstairs.
Make it downstairs.
Yeah.
And I have to say, at that point in my life, and it was probably a year, I had 100% success in going out there.
So you never turned around?
I never, not even once.
Yeah.
And when I got down there, of course, I felt like shit. And then I was like, okay, well, just go out and run for 1K. I'd say like 98% of the time I made it to 5K.
Yeah.
I really did. And even today, running 5K is not easy for me after all that running. But I would have to say that it's now I can actually do it consistently because I built up that muscle, and it took years.
I have a slightly related. I have a theory, right? That people who dread running or working out love that there is an AQI.
Yes.
Love the fact that they can easily access AQI and look it up, the air quality index, because it is the greatest like get out of jail free or like call pass, right? Because once that AQI is slightly just a little above, like you can still do it, you can still run, but it's like slightly above, you give yourself a built-in excuse. But like, well, the air quality is not good, so I'm up. I would work out if the air quality was good, but AQI is too high today, so I'm going to stay in.
Actually, I'm the opposite.
Really?
I haven't ran. I stopped running again. So I was running before for a couple months ago. Remember, I was telling you, I did it for a couple months. And what happened was there was a string of like constant, really bad, like high AQI. And obviously, I'm not going to run when it's high AQI. But my reaction was different. My reaction wasn't like, oh, I guess I can't run. It's more like, fuck, because I've already built this habit. I don't want to break this habit. I know it's going to take me so long to get back into this habit. And then I remember it was like a week, and I started shooting, and then next thing you know, it went like a week or two without running. And then I'm like, fuck, I'm out. Now I got to build. I have to change my mindset to get back in again.
Because like, of course, like it takes years to build like a sustainable habit that you can do like almost without thinking. But that's why choosing easier habits to like keep going, it's so important in the first part, right? Because if after a while it's like, oh, but I'm just gonna stop for a few days, but then you get out of that initial momentum, and then it's gonna be so much harder to go back, because again, switching, the cost is so much higher.
That's my biggest fear all the time, is once I build a habit and I'm really feeling confident, feeling good, and then I slip off a little bit. Oh God, it's so hard for me to get back in again, and I'm out.
True, but at the same time, I think that is also like the mental trap that we get into. It's like, oh, well, I had this streak, like all the apps now, and like the little calendar.
Oh, how
X
he
thing
loves those apps.
Oh yeah,
like all the little streaks. You go like, oh, you got your badges, and like I understand gamification. I really do. It works with our brain. Rewards are very important, but at the same time, it kind of builds on like a perfectionism tendency of like, oh well, I missed one day and now I'm terrible, and I'm like
it's all falling apart now.
I'm
fucked. It's all falling apart now because I missed one day.
I'm lost now because I missed that day. And look, as a recovering perfectionist, I can definitely say that it's hard. Like you want everything to be at the best. You want everything, because I know I can do it. Like, but if something happens, you're like, well, but now I missed one day.
Now it's ruined.
Now it's ruined. And like, you're like, but at the same time, you go like, yes, you missed a day, you missed 2 days, you missed 3 weeks. How important is for you to get back to it? And if it's important, like if you never get back to it, then you'll never really get whatever you're going, right?
Yep.
So it's not going to be the perfect journey, but guess what? Life is messy.
Yes.
You don't have a perfect record of anything. And for me, honestly, it's been taking a lot of inner work to be okay with that, because I was the kind of person like, well, if it's not perfect, I'm not going to do it, because I used to like just think that if things are not done perfectly, they're not worth doing. And I learned that that's not true.
It's also an excuse, actually.
Absolutely.
It's putting,
absolutely. Yeah. It's just giving yourself like another way of getting out.
Of not failing, of just not, because you're not doing it.
I mean, like,
good point.
But I have that same issue, and it's been a real nightmare for me over my life, where it's caused me incredible amounts of inaction in my entire life, and it still is a challenge for me. Is this whole thing, perfectionism, and causing inaction? And it's actually not OCD. I think it's actually fear. Mm-hmm. It's because I fear something about myself. Going back to the habits piece, I think that like building a habit is not a one-time thing. Like by definition, a habit is something you have to constantly maintain. Mm-hmm. Everything in life that's worth doing requires maintenance. And there is that initial process that you described of those one things or stacking that allows you to start building a habit. But to maintain a habit, you have to go through adversity. Right. Because like I'll show you this really interesting graph. This is the ultra runner guy that I talked about, and he was writing on Outside Magazine, and he draws this little chart, right? So for the listeners, it's basically like, imagine a cliff, right? So something really a high mountain, but then if you take one step, you fall off the cliff. It's straight down. So he's basically drawn a cliff. He's standing at the edge. This guy's like an ultra marathon runner. He says, I don't know about other people, but I live my life on that edge of the cliff, like a very slippery slope. And at the top of the cliff, I'm meeting all my goals. And so he has this quote, like, I'm the best version of myself. I'm doing everything. I'm perfect. I'm healthy, meeting deadlines. I'm productive. But he's like, I'm actually just one small little breeze away from just pushing me over the edge. And this guy is way more accomplished than I am, for sure, in terms of exercise. I mean, he's been invited by Outside Magazine to write for them, number one. And number two, he's completed all kinds of different ultramarathons and stuff like that. Right. And he, someone we view as really accomplished in this area, he's right on that edge. And so that's what habit, like you got to get on the damn cliff. Right. And so that's all the stuff that you talked about, right? You can't make it too distant. You got to build up. But once you get there, you're always going to fall off because of AQI or whatever it is. And you have to build that resilience. The AQI thing, I just like, I that's not I've had lots of excuses, but AQI, rain was one of them.
Yeah.
But AQI was never, because I lived in Beijing and I was like,
You run in high AQI.
I don't give a shit.
Really? You don't feel like
Wow.
shit after running? I
No.
feel like shit
No.
after
Okay.
running.
Well, I
I
don't run,
don't-
so I just
I've
eliminated
never,
the problem.
I've never checked the AQI. I purposely don't check the
Really?
AQI
And
because I don't
how
want that to even be a
it's
factor.
self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go out there and you think the
Yeah.
air is, it's not gonna fucking
Yeah.
kill you, right? It's not like it's gonna kill you.
I don't know. I just know that doing FitFam workouts gets canceled
Yeah.
if the AQI is above
Yeah.
150. So I
Yeah.
know that is like a policy they have,
Yeah.
and you know.
But it's definitely mentally an excuse.
Yeah.
What I realized over time, and I have lots of excuses, and when the Sunday 7 a.m. West Bund thing,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, shy, you're a little chula, and I'm just like, fuck
Yes.
yeah.
It's like a snow day when you're
Yes.
a kid.
Yeah,
Having
like,
buts.
I don't have to be anywhere.
But I guarantee you, and I know this, is that every time they get canceled, I have 5 minutes of happiness, and I probably won't work out that day.
Right.
And it's 12 hours of just sluggishness. And when I do get out there, it's 30 minutes of pain, and it's 12 hours of just optimism for me. And it is what it is, And so, but I was injured, and I mean, I'm speaking like I'm like some kind of major athlete, which I'm not. I did some running, and I did a little bit of a longer distance in December, and I probably got a little bit too much mileage on my knees, and my knees aren't that good. And so I got a little bit injured, and I wasn't able to run for a month, and I came back from it. And, now I'm like almost 6 months later, I'm kind of almost where I was before. And I never really, kind of experienced a lot of adversity. And I'm the type of person who was like a little bit of pain. I'm like,不行了, just really, I'm really weak.
I need to rest.
Yeah. And there was a period of that 1 month where I couldn't exercise, and I had to learn other alternative forms of exercise because I realized how critical exercise was in my life at this point,
Right.
and I had been on that metaphorical cliff. And so I just had to find other ways. And, there's no excuses at that point. So once I went through severe adversity and keeping the habit, it taught me some resilience. And I don't know if something's going to happen where I'm going to fall off this cliff, but I've already fallen off a couple of times. And coming back is the most important part.
Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
most important part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what the graph doesn't show you is that if you were to scan to the right, there's probably a set of escalators or stairs leading you back up the cliff so you
Right.
can get back on.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But sometimes you have to build your own escalator.
Yeah. Oh,
Like it's not
Yeah.
like sometimes it's easier, and sometimes you like the planning or the quote unquote the hack of life is building systems that allow you to get back on the horse quicker than you would normally allow time. One of the two fundamental, I think, philosophies that I subscribe to are essentialism and stoicism.
Mm.
And I was listening to Tim Ferriss' TED Talk the other day. He was talking about fear setting,
Yeah.
which is a very good one. I
Yeah,
hadn't
yeah.
heard it in a while. And there was a very good quote by Seneca, which is hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard
Yeah.
life. Which is like, at some points you have to do the hard work in order to simplify whatever you're going through. And if you don't, it's just going to get harder.
You can't live your life avoiding hard choices.
And it's the same thing with short-term pain for long-term success, right? It's like if you do you talk to anyone who has a business or who has things that they want to accomplish, that the beginning is going to be harder because you have to get into the habit. You have to set up systems. You have to find a client. You have to decide what you want to do. The first beginning is always the hardest part. But if you do that properly, you will set yourself up for doing things better.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't finished for the second time. I'm reading Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And then the second book of his is Effortless, which I really look forward to reading because it looks
too.
fantastic.
Me too.
I have it. I just haven't finished Essentialism. So I'm just working through that.
Well, I also like what you said, how you phrased the whole idea of stacking. That's one thing out of this conversation that really stood out to me too, because I've always phrased it as connecting the dots. That works for me too, but I like the stacking visual because I kind of see it as when we talk about incremental habits, I see it as a building, right? You have to stack. You can't build the first floor and then immediately the 100th floor.
Right.
You have to build the second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor, so on until you get to the 100th floor. You have to go through that process.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
you
no
can't-
other way.
Yeah, and like, I mean, well said, and kind of to your point, and I've come to this conclusion is that, you know, the amount of pain that you're gonna suffer in your life is constant. Like it's not like some people suffer less pain or some people like if you want to live a good life, you're gonna have to go through these hardships.
Right.
And the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to go through the hardship on your terms, or do you want to go through the hardship on life's terms? Let's say you don't exercise, right? And you don't build up that resilience. Then one day you're not going to be healthy and you're going to get your fucking ass kicked, because we know that. I've had little small, health scares, and they're so frightening. They're way more frightening than me going out for a 3-hour workout.
Right.
And so when I started doing my, I don't know if you've heard of Temporary Humans, right? We work with FitFam as well. But we started doing these really hardcore workouts, and like I wasn't really up to them, honestly, mentally. But I had some really good friends in the community, and I was just like, what I told myself every morning on those weekends when I didn't have to do this was just like, look, do it on your terms. Like life is gonna be really fucking hard, and go out there and choose to kick your own ass. So because someone else kicking your ass is going to be 10 times harder.
Absolutely.
And if you
I love that. I love that.
And if you
Yeah.
don't do the things in your career that are going to get you to that point where you really feel successful, you're going to regret that. And every day you're going to be beating yourself up constantly like you're a fucking loser. And imagine like living that kind of life. It's terrible. So the amount of pain and struggle and challenges that everyone faces is going to be the same. The question is, like, how are you going to face these things? And if you exercise, you do all these things, and you're willing to kind of take the pain up front, you're going to have a much better life. Because if you don't do any of this stuff and you turn 50 and you're fucking in terrible health, you didn't do anything in your career, you don't have any money, you don't have family, you don't have good relationships, your life's going to really fucking suck, and it's going to be too late to do anything about it.
Absolutely.
Having said that, of course, then the challenge is then to take those incremental steps so you can take control. And I think a lot of people don't. And in many areas of my life, I haven't yet.
Right.
I love that. I love that picture of like kick your own ass so that life doesn't get a chance to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like be preemptive about it.
Like one of the reasons why I started my China company is that I thought for a long time that it was too complicated. I had other arrangements, like I could work still because I was working with different companies, but I thought that setting up my own legal entity was way too complicated. And then I was talking to a few friends who had their own company. Were like, go and choose the problems you want to have. Like, why do you want to live your life just reacting to problems? At least you know what problems you're going to go through. So they're not going to be easier, but at least you know that you chose that so that you can have whatever you want.
So you're
love
more
that.
prepared.
Exactly, right? And of course you cannot prepare for everything in life. That's ridiculous. But going into one direction that you want to follow, at least you can preemptively say, well, I might run into XYZ, and if XYZ happen, and even if Z happens, at least well, okay, I know that it's because I chose to do this, so I wanted this. And of course, if it sucks too much, you can always decide not to do it. You don't have to box yourself into something. But at the same time, it's okay, I'm not just passively reacting to everything that's happening to me. I'm going somewhere and I'm overcoming obstacles, and I'm deciding time by time how to do it. But I chose to do this. And I really understand that choosing to do things is also a privilege, right? But if
Totally.
you do have the opportunity to choose, then choosing your own problems is definitely a better way, at least for me, to go through life.
Gratitude is so important.
Oh gosh.
We forget it. And I
Journaling,
think-
gratitude. That's everybody who talks about journaling is what are 3 things you're grateful for today? What are 3 things that you're grateful for this week? I moved to a new apartment, and one of the first few weeks I was plugging in my TV, and then my power went out, and I was like, it's a new apartment, I don't know what to do. And then I sorted it out, and then the next day I was like, I am very grateful that there's electricity in my apartment, because otherwise I would be very, very, very uncomfortable. It's a very stupid thing, but when you don't have it, you noticed.
I'm gonna be really an asshole here for a second.
I'm
Please.
okay, 1 second. I feel like there's certain aspects of our personality that definitely connect. But yeah, definitely every morning, like going on the subway, all this stuff. Like I'm kind of short fused, and so when I was taking the subway, eventually I got to the point where like, what if the subway didn't work today?
Right.
What would you think? What if the shower didn't work today? Because I'm a complainer, like a mofo.
Like because you know
Like a
what?
mofo.
Because complaining is easy. Like we all do it because it's our way to like.
It's a coping
It
mechanism.
is.
right?
It is absolutely like it's like I don't like this, so I'm gonna try to rationalize it in some way so I don't have to deal with it, and it's perfectly okay until it gets to the point of like that's the only thing I'm doing. Because you can complain. I complain like when I was at 5:45 outside in January, I was complaining a lot. But that was my coping mechanism to get me through and still do it.
Yeah.
If you just complain about it and don't do anything about it, then you kind of lost your right to complain.
Yeah.
Because now I get to complain about being outside in the rain in January.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of myself for having done that. And complaining kind of helped me get through it. But, just complaining is not going to help things.
Yeah. Choosing your problem allows you to have the solution solving mindset.
Right.
Whereas complaining
Yeah.
means that someone else is controlling your life.
You're also like
point.
delegating responsibility. It's like, well, if I'm complaining and I'm not doing anything about it, it's someone else's problem.
It's accountability.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're
And,
like, well,
okay, we want to get to Howie stuff, but here's a chart.
oh,
from,
Lizzie and Molly. I
Yes,
love them.
Liz and Molly.
Liz and
Yes,
Molly,
they're
I
awesome.
love them.
I'm just starting the book.
Complaining about the problem, talking about a solution.
Well,
Yes.
that's what I
They-
feel like you guys do all the time about the podcast. You guys complain about the podcast, and I'm the only one trying to find solutions. Anyway, I'm venting. Go ahead.
Justin, would
Howie,
you
go.
like to share something with the group?
Howie, go ahead. I'm joking.
Justin allows us to be part of this amazing, beautiful, wonderful podcast. With- Justin is the one
Shut the
thing
fuck
for
up.
me
The one thing. Yeah.
that allows
Justin
me
is the one thing.
to participate in the podcast community. Justin's the one thing.
Okay. Well, good thing is Justin is not whiskey.
But Eric and Howie are not the one thing that
We are
allow
not the
him-
one thing.
like, they're the one thing that give him headaches. Okay.
Howie, you had
Howie, it's
you had
you're
something.
up.
I mean, it's not really being an asshole. I was just gonna say,
Please do.
because journaling, being grateful, stuff like that, meditation. These are all words thrown around.
A lot.
a lot, right?
Yes.
These are hot words for the past couple of years. And I am one, just like Eric, who has read up some of these books. He's much more than I have. And I did try this whole, being grateful when you wake up. One of the techniques was think of the 3 things that you're grateful for, right? The first thing you do when you wake up to set your day right, And I did it for like a month, and I felt like during that time, like trying to really analyze, like, has it really helped me in a certain way? And I felt like it didn't at all. Like it didn't do anything for me.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, other things that I incorporated, like the cold shower and other things that I've
Oh gosh,
incorporated.
cold
into my life.
showers. Ugh.
Do you do that?
No.
Howie is all about cold showers.
Yeah,
We've
I've been
had
doing it for
many
years.
episodes about it.
Okay.
And
no.
no, okay.
I know that people do it. I do understand the theory behind it. I like my warm showers.
As do I.
Maria and I don't like pain.
Yeah.
No.
I feel like you guys are
I
long
get it.
lost
I'm
friends
like-
or
I'm like-
something.
I'm sorry.
You guys are soulmates here.
Like I'm trying to get smart about things. Like if I don't have to be in the cold, I'll
Yeah.
prefer not to.
Well,
I
then
will-
that goes to him choosing his own problems.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
and that's fair. And that's exactly. Sorry. Continue. Then
Yeah, well,
I'll
what I was going
share.
to say is that, so making it a habit to stop and think about things you're grateful for me, did not add anything for me.
What were the things
But-
that you said you were? I'm not.
Let me just finish.
Yeah.
Finish. But
You're about to say shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
He was
Tommy.
trying to be nice. He was trying to be
I was like-
nice about
Yeah, I was
it.
like, say that. I was like, but Eric, when you mentioned about, when I get on the subway and then I'm thankful
fight.
for the subway, and but when you're in the moment and that negativity comes out,
Right.
right, or the where appreciation is needed, but you're not feeling it, And you stop yourself and be like, okay, no, stop it, change it around. What are you grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
And that moment, then yes, that helps. There is a result that comes out of that
Mm-hmm.
because I've tried that as well. I've been like, wait, why am I getting angry? Change your mindset, that blah, blah, blah. And then my mood changes and yes, that works. So all I was trying to say is that, there's certain techniques that were shared in books or people of like, first thing in the morning, being grateful. It didn't work for me.
Right.
It felt very empty because there's no lasting effect for me in that sense because I really thought about it. But if a moment happens and being grateful was appropriate, it changed my mood and there was an effect. There was a result. That's what I was trying to say.
You're absolutely empowered to use the tools that work for you and share them out. And conversely, it's funny. Actually, like when I'm in that moment and I'm angry, like gratitude sometimes doesn't actually work because I'm so furious. The being grateful on the subway, it's more of a preventative thing. So like I get on the subway
really?
and if I can remind myself to be grateful, then if something's going to escalate, then I won't get to the point because when I get...
It's Bruce Banner trying to keep the Hulk in.
Right.
So it's like,
but once I'm Hulk...
Yeah, doing the breathing exercise. Try to keep the Hulk from coming out.
Before the Hulk comes out, that's the best time to keep the Hulk from coming out. Once the Hulk comes out, none of that shit works.
I mean, and that's a habit, isn't it? Like, it's just like knowing, like going back to what you were saying is like knowing what works for you and knowing yourself. Like, this is something that I keep coming back in a lot of conversations I have with people is like, how much do you know what you want and how things work for you? Like, just because we have 1,000 self-help or self-development books and podcasts and TV shows and whatever's out there, it doesn't mean that first, we have to read them all. No. Second, that they all work for everybody. Like the one thing is something, for example, that really resonated with me, like essentialism does, because that's the kind of mindset that I prefer to have. It doesn't mean that every single person would relate to essentialism. Like I have a friend of mine and she defines herself as a maximalist. So like she does the exact opposite.
That's
and
hilarious.
like and that works for her.
Yeah.
Clearly we have very wildly different opinions about stuff and that's okay. I would not try to quote unquote sell her on essentialism because that doesn't resonate with her. And that's okay because she knows what worked with her. And that's why all these like theories and like we were speaking briefly before about cults, right? I think that the whole idea of like the social media spreading all this, buzzwords like mindfulness and journaling and gratitude, there's a lot of just like empty sharing of just be grateful. Like, well, it's not that easy, is it?
Yeah.
Just be grateful doesn't really help me. And again, I come back to like intention. What do you want to get out of it? If you're just doing it because so-and-so told you that it's a cool thing to do in the morning, you're not really going to get anything out of it, especially if it doesn't resonate with you. Try it, of course. Like if you don't try it once, then you don't have enough data to know if it works. But try it for a little while. Give it honest time to see if it works. If it doesn't work, just drop it. Like another thing that I often talk to my clients is like the zero-based decision thinking. You guys know
What
about
is
that? Zero-based decision thinking?
No.
Which is like, we as humans, we often attach a lot of meaning to things we already been doing. So for example, if I've been in a job for 20 years, I'm going to find it much, much harder to quit but I already gave 20 years of my life to this. Regardless of how I feel. Decision. I think it's zero-based decision thinking, decision making. I don't
Well, in a way, it's also
it's the
similar.
endowment effect. It's the endowment effect.
It's a little bit similar to the sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly.
Right?
It is basically the same thing, which is like,
thing.
that is just a spin on, if you have to make a decision, think about it, like forget about the sunk cost and think about it. If you had to choose to do this from scratch, would you do it? Which is something that Greg McKeown talks about in essentialism. Is like, the Marie Kondo effect is, they try to declutter your closet and then try to declutter your life. The idea is that, get rid of things that don't serve you. And one of the things that, again, Marie Kondo, also fun fact, someone told me I'm the Marie Kondo of brains. And I'm like, I'm going to take that title and wear it very proudly. But, if
it's on your name card now.
I definitely should have. And, if you're trying to declutter your closet is, okay, this is pretty, but if you didn't have it, how much would you spend to buy
Would you
it?
still pay the same price
Exactly. And if the answer is meh, then you just throw it off. Same thing with like, getting on projects, making decisions, buying things, getting involved into whatever. If you were not already involved into something, how hard would you work to get in there? And if the answer is I wouldn't, then you know that it's something that is not important to you at the moment, so that you can, quote unquote, give yourself permission to let go because it's not essential. Because if it's something you wouldn't fight for, it means that you're just doing it because, it's either status quo, or because someone told you it's important, or because social media told you that it's trendy.
Energy.
Exactly.
Well, I think this is a really important point. And this is one of the things I really appreciate about what you said about your book is the way I interpreted it was like reevaluating your habits.
Right.
And it's to make sure that we're not just going through the motions. Just like what you said, like reading self-help books. I assume that, there might be a lot of people out there that read self-help books, business books, whatever books. But it's more that they get or they get some sort of, they feel like they achieve something from just the act of reading it, right?
So there's a lot of self-help circle jerk, because just reading them because everybody does it, or just because it's a trendy thing to do, it's not gonna be helpful, right?
Well, that's one thing, but another thing is like we also get caught up in our own narratives that the habits that we have in place are healthy, good habits. Therefore, we should keep doing them.
Right.
And that's not always necessarily the case. It might start off that way, but like I had this conversation with Eric. I don't know if it was on a podcast episode or if it was off air or not. But Eric has always been very practicing mindfulness. He meditates. He does all these things that are to him very beneficial, healthy habits, you would say. But we had this conversation, I think, a couple of weeks ago where Eric was saying, like, the mindfulness piece has almost become just emotion for him. And he was doing it he caught himself doing it just for the sake of doing it. And it wasn't actually necessarily helping him anymore, maybe. And I just feel like that's a really important thing. Like we instill all these habits in ourselves and we test them out. But we often don't realize that we need to experiment with them and adjust them. Whereas we get caught up in and buy into the whole narrative like, oh, well, everyone says this is a healthy habit, so I just have to keep it there and keep doing it. And we're not really thinking for ourselves like, well, is this really helping me?
Can I speak for 3 seconds about toxic positivity?
Oh, yes.
Toxic positivity.
Right. As you guys know, like I'm one of the co-founders with Janine, who's been on the podcast, of Monday Morning Motivation. So we have this community online where we do like every Monday morning webinars with different speakers who talk about various inspiring or motivating topics. And we have a community, which means on WeChat, that we share a lot of quotes that are inspiring and motivating. And I've been honestly trying to steer away from the toxic positivity trend, which is like, just smile through everything. That's just, everything's going to be fine. Like, that's not helpful at all. Just pretend that things are not wrong. It's not working. Like, that's how we got into messes in the first place, just pretending that everything was fine. And so while not everybody has the bandwidth to go like into very deep self-awareness every single day, just acknowledging that things sometimes are not great is as valuable as telling yourself that, creating good habits is important, as, like pushing yourself is important. But just the trend, and I speak this about especially social media, that, like we portray the best versions of ourselves and like everybody's always super successful and happy and, sunshines and rainbows. But that has a very big impact on our mental health. So like, trying to acknowledge that things are not always great is also important. And that's why different people have different standards or different, like levels of acceptance. For some people, being okay with something just means like, okay, today I'm having a bad day. I'm acknowledging that, and tomorrow's going to be better. For some people, it's okay, today I need help and I need to find qualified help. and that is important. And I'm not just gonna smile through it. I'm not just gonna power through it, because that's not gonna help me.
It can make you feel worse.
I
Yeah,
100%
absolutely.
like. I know one of my shortcomings sometimes is that, you know, this whole self-help stuff. I'm reading these books and they're really beautifully, elegantly written, and I treat that as a type of entertainment and escape. And you don't want to ever get to a point where this is not helping you solve the problems in your life and really meeting them head on. And so then they become escape. So every day, like, you know, do some meditation, you know, you do some reading. That's not solving your problems, because you're actually going there to escape your problems. What you need to do is take the content in those and then meet your problems head on, and then just, like, you know, experience some suffering in that moment.
Like, you know, in the self-righteous way, like, oh, I'm reading self-help books 2 hours a day. Like, yeah, well, good for you. Are you doing anything about that?
Nothing.
No.
Yeah.
And like, and this is like a lot of people, and including myself at the beginning, are like, oh, well, I feel much better than everybody else because I'm not scrolling to Instagram. I'm reading self-help books. Like, great. Yeah, but I'm not really doing anything about it. So it's not really.
It's falling in love with emotion, right?
Yeah,
The
and it's
motion
also like
of doing
trying
it.
to think that, like, oh, because this is better than Instagram. Don't get me wrong. I don't like social media. So I definitely think that reading any book is better than scrolling your Instagram feed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything with it. And if you're not doing anything with it, then it doesn't really make a difference. It's still entertaining, like a movie, hopefully a good movie and an understandable movie. But
Reading about how other people successfully solve their problems is not necessarily beneficial if you don't apply these techniques to solving your own problems. And I'm guilty of that. I'll have to say, like, sometimes I'm reading about best practices of how to solve problems, and my problem is actually not applying these things to my own problems.
how to self-problem that?
Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having
always
me.
a blast talking to
It
you.
was so fun. Thank you.
I'm so glad Howie and Eric were able to attend this time.
Yes.
But your book, Clarity, where can people get it?
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yes, I'll send you a link.
Okay, so just look for Clarity. Just type in Clarity.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing, which is simple time management tools for clarity, and my name, and it should be okay.
Cool.
And if there's one thing that people will get after reading your book, what would that be?
Clarity.
Happiness.
Well,
Clarity. Yeah.
clarity. No, it's
Because
just
I'm
like
about to press the button.
If
so
you said anything but Clarity.
no,
I'm
like
about to press the button,
what I'm honestly think is just like that is a book that can help you see things that might be helpful for you, but you have to choose which things work for you. So this is just an awareness, help you get some awareness of some options.
And like, just don't buy into the common narrative
No,
sometime, right?
No, just don't.
Yeah.
Well-
Don't buy into the cliches.
Please don't. Oh God.
well, that was enough for me. I just pressed the button.
Oh, you
Yay.
did.
Thank
You did just
Well,
press
thank
the
you,
button.
Eric. I appreciate.
Can you add a sound effect to that?
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
All right, Maria. It was a pleasure as
was
always.
awesome.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for coming
much,
on.
you guys, for having me. It was a blast.
Just right before we go, where else can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Maria Pastorelli, and then at mariapastorelli.com. And then my company website is bridgecoaching.online.
Bridgecoaching.online.
Yes.
Like
Awesome.
Chow Bridge.
Yes.
Yes. All right, guys. That was Maria. This is The Honest Drink. I'm Justin.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Howie.
All right, guys. Be good, be well. Peace.
There is a